Yeah, I found out I was pregnant, and I was so excited. It was something that we wanted, and it was in a really kind of difficult time for both Shane and I. We had just lost our friends had just passed away, our best friends, and our godson in an accident, and so just a month later, to see that those two lines on the pregnancy test that was positive was the best news. And I was excited to be able to share with Shane, so I surprised him, and he could not believe it.
And this time she didn't give me any heads up, so it wasn't a total shock in that we were trying, but I was not expecting her to tell me that.
So at about 20 weeks pregnant, I discovered something wasn't right. Shane and I were out of town, and up until this point, I'd felt really good. I've always been a really healthy person and pretty active, so I expected that my pregnancy would go perfectly. And in fact, I was really excited to be pregnant and to experience everything, and was just thrilled that things were going so well, and just expected it to continue that way. But while we were away, I started to feel what felt like contraction type pain, just cramps that were really, really bad.
She was like buckled over on the floor.
Yeah, I couldn't really stand up all the way, and because it was that bad, I knew this isn't normal. So I called my doctor, and they told me almost immediately to just go to
Come
the
right in.
emergency
Yeah.
room.
Yeah.
So we did.
Yeah, we hopped in the car. We were with my family, maybe a couple hours away
Mhm.
from our hospital, but a couple hours away from any hospital. And so we hopped in the car and rushed back, like winding, hilly camping roads, and made it back. And I remember waiting in the emergency room forever. And then they finally called her in for some tests,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, they did an ultrasound to see if they saw anything funny, and at the ultrasound, it was just before we were about to find out the sex of our baby. So it was like a week when this all happened, and so we didn't know, and we were excited to think like, okay, well, if maybe this guy can give us some bright news, like just hoping that everything was looking good, and thinking like, I think the baby's moving. I had felt the baby move, and so I think he's okay, or he, she, what do you know? So we, we're laying there, and the technician wasn't really saying anything.
hmm yeah, it felt like he knew something,
Yeah.
and couldn't tell us.
Mhm.
And of course, our fear was that he knew that either the heart wasn't beating or saw something terrible. And so it was really nerve-wracking. We're people who are full of faith. For real, we try to walk that out all the time and trust God even through really terrible situations. But it was tough sitting there. He's being quiet because he can't really tell us what's going on. That's supposed to be communicated by the doctor. And he warned us of that, but still we're like, oh my gosh. We're guessing at what he's seeing,
Yeah.
wondering, again, if he's seen that the heart's not beating anymore or if something's torn. And although it went on from there for a short time to not be good news, I will say that in that appointment, toward the end of it, we said, man, you're making us really nervous. Can you give us anything? And we even told him, we said our appointment, our ultrasound appointment, to find out the sex of the baby is a few weeks away.
Yeah.
Maybe you could surprise us and tell us the sex of the baby now. That would sure make us feel better. And so he ended up telling us. He said he was quiet for a little while, again, making it feel like something was terribly wrong. But eventually just said, why don't you tell your little boy to open his legs so we can get a better view? And we knew it was a boy, and we knew he wouldn't be saying that if at least the heart wasn't beating. So that was a little bit comforting.
It was good. It was comforting to be able to identify him, and we knew that it was Mosley because we had already had that name picked out, and so we were just happy to have that and to know that he was alive. At the very least, he was fine. So anyway, a bit of waiting more in the emergency room, and it was probably 3 or 4 in the morning at this point, and the doctor comes in and gives us some unfortunate news that we did not expect. And he said that I had what's called placental abruption. So the house that the baby lives in basically was starting to tear off of my body, and worst case scenario, we would lose the baby.
So hearing that news and knowing that the placental tear is such a fragile thing was really nerve-wracking, and it was hard to not be fearful for days or weeks or even months. wondering if every pain was more tearing, or if every time she felt discomfort, something else was going wrong.
Yeah.
And we really had to learn to trust God in that process. And we don't mean that like in the cheesy way where like a light switch comes on and everything's fine. A light switch did not come on and everything wasn't necessarily fine circumstantially in the moment. At that point, there had been no healing. We went into multiple appointments in the weeks following that, and each time we walked in hoping and even expecting that it would have been healed, and it wasn't. So every time they did a test or an ultrasound and we heard that there was still a tear and then it had not healed, that was crushing. But I say that to say we just had to trust God through that process, through continuing to get bad news and not getting the healing we wanted. We just kept reminding ourselves of who He is, of His character, and that He had us covered. And ultimately just trust Him, trust His timing, and however the situation was going to unfold. We just rested, did our best to rest in that trust. And then maybe a month or two later, Kayla experienced kind of a similar pain. And that had happened a few times, but this time, like since the initial appointment, she'd had some discomfort. But this was different, and it felt kind of like the first time. And so we felt like, man, with the tear that we know is there, we have to be really careful. So we decided to go in just to be careful. We go in, and has nothing to do with the tear, and they discover an entirely different, equally like life-threatening issue.
As we went in, I went in stomping my feet. I was mad. I didn't want to be there. I wanted to ignore it in a lot of ways. I just wanted to rebuke the situation, and I just thought, this can't be happening, that something worse is going on. And that was after, we had gone to the emergency room twice with this condition, with placental rupture. It was excruciating pain sometimes, and I had been put on kind of a rest regimen. And
At home.
And then, but at this point, it was like, okay, let's go find out for sure, and then they'll just send us home, and we'll be fine, and we'll carry on. But we went in, and they actually ended up keeping us.
They test her for a broken water situation at the hospital, and they come back maybe 20 minutes later, and they not only tell us that, yes, your water has broken, but they're there with our doctor, and they say, we need you to stay at the hospital, and we're going to put you on bed rest, and you're going to stay here for the remainder of your pregnancy. And at this time, she was 26 weeks pregnant, and they planned to keep her, hoping she stayed pregnant, but assuming she would give birth at any minute. Literally, they were prepared for her to give birth that minute.
Yeah. They pumped me full of drugs.
Yeah, just
Protect the
assuming he
baby's
might
brain.
come out because they'd found that the water had broken.
Yeah.
And that was scary.
Yeah.
Especially because of the placenta stuff. It just felt like everything was extra fragile, and we had to be kind of extra on edge, knowing that there were now a couple very serious issues.
Being there at 26 weeks pregnant, if the baby was born that night or very soon after, the chances were really high that he would have cerebral palsy or many different brain defects, or there's just a lot that could be wrong with him. So each day it felt like a victory that I was still pregnant after that. But
in fact, they wrote on her whiteboard in her bedroom, which essentially, it was the hospital room, but it was essentially her bedroom for a couple months. They wrote on the board under a goals section, stay pregnant. That was her goal. So every day they treated like a victory.
Right. And I just felt devastated. I felt really disappointed. I was super bummed out. I was heartbroken, thinking there's something else wrong, that I wasn't healed. I didn't really understand it. But I'm going to be honest, really quickly after, settling through those emotions, and I didn't rush past them. I let myself feel it, and I even cried out to God and told him how I was feeling and how my heart was broken and how I was scared. And, I talked to Shane really openly about it. We just constantly were in communication about how God was still with us, and that, we still contended for healing, and despite going through all of it. And he really was really present in my room every day. It felt peaceful. The nurses would come in and talk about how peaceful it felt in there and how much they loved to come in and see us. And it kind of became what was really sour news and really disappointing situation became kind of a sweet space, and it was ironic. And this was October, so I was gonna miss Christmas and crib bed prepping and buying things for my baby and nesting and all the things that you want to do as a new mom. I know.
We cannot overstate enough how serious it was. They were not gonna let her go. So we would have done Thanksgiving in the hospital. I would have had to paint the bedroom and prep the house on my own, things like that. But so all that to say, we shared about it with our friends and our family and a bit online, asking people to pray, but also kind of privately knowing that it would be an opportunity to share God's goodness when he finally healed her body, or when Mose was born and we were just believing he was going to be fine. And we kept saying, okay, this is so difficult right now, but we kept looking forward to the future, knowing we're going to get to the day he's born, he's going to be fine, and all of this will not have mattered at all. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, we got to, while we were in the hospital too, we had to have a couple ultrasounds. Any ultrasound opportunity felt like an opportunity just to get to see him, and see him moving and growing. And he, it was fun to see him the first time. I remember being there and he was smiling, and the technician told us that she saw him smiling. So to see that and to know that he was in there, it felt like God was saying, like, he's blissfully unaware of what you might be going through all this, but he is fine, and I have him. And that brought me a lot of comfort, just knowing that he was in there, just unaware, just growing and getting fatter. And that's exactly what was happening. So over and over again in this process, he has dropped wisdom on us like crazy, and on Shane to give me just the right words to say that brought peace to my heart and just covered the situation. He was my rock, and he just brought Jesus to everything.
Oh, stop it.
Really, though, it did. I don't know what I would have done without him. And so that morning I talked to the doctor, and I was telling her how I was feeling, and I asked her, would I be allowed to, pretty please, have another test? And it was something that they were hesitant to do because it was really invasive. But the doctor was really sweet to me and really understanding, and she was outweighed everything that I'd given her, and she's like, well, let's see about giving you another ultrasound, and then we'll go from there. So within like a couple hours, the ultrasound was ordered, and the fluid level around the baby was the same, which means that I had not leaked.
More.
Yes, he was doing just wonderful, and it was normal. I guess the fluid level around the baby was normal. So from there, they were like, okay, let's test you again.
From the ultrasound room to your room, and when we got there, the nurses brought in the test. We didn't know. She'd asked for it, but we weren't sure they were going to give it to her. And here the nurses come with the test.
Yeah, they came in, and this is 10 days in to my hospital stay, thinking that I would be there
for months.
For the remainder of it, or at least until 33 weeks. And they brought in and they did the test, and within an hour we got the results back.
Yeah, there were two nurses, and with a smile on their face, they're like, you passed the test. And somehow, miraculously, they didn't say that, but I'll say that. But they said somehow the test says your water is not broken, and the levels are fine, and you can go home.
Yep. It's still just thinking about it. It wasn't that long ago, so thinking about it, that moment, I remember feeling like I didn't understand it, first of all, but I did feel a peace that was beyond that, just like the scripture says. It was overwhelming. And both Shane and I just felt grateful. We just thanked the Lord over and over again, and it was exciting to be able to share that testimony, because I had already posted about it online, and so to be able to share a follow-up, like, wait, stop, hold the phones. I am being released from the hospital when the doctor said I would not be. I am, I could go full term when the doctor said that I definitely would not go full term.
And I'm completely healed.
And my
water is not broken.
Right. So we left, and it took a while for us to adjust to that new reality, because we had already given ourselves to the situation. But we did, of course, and we were so happy. So just a short time after we got home, I went in just for a routine ultrasound, because I was high-risk pregnancy, so they had to do extra. And we were in, and we were still believing that the Lord was going to heal me, but also we weren't sure like what the doctor would say. We didn't know. We knew that it was possible that things were still the same.
And we'd maybe taken our focus off of that,
Right.
believing she would be healed. But I think at that point we'd really given it to God.
Yeah.
He'd taken care of the water situation, the placenta tear, which was still there as far as we knew, was still scary, but we just kind of given it up. Like, all right, God, you're going to have to take care of this. And so it wasn't really on our minds. We
Yeah.
went in, this was just a routine checkup with a specialist.
Kind of thinking that things would be maintained. The tear could still be there, but maybe it just wouldn't get worse,
Yeah.
something. And we went in, and the doctor walks in after our ultrasound, and she just casually says, I don't see it. I don't see a tear anymore. So Shane and I
Cried.
Yeah, we didn't believe it, but we did, because we serve a God who already had healed me, and this was just like the cherry on the cake, on the top of the cake. It was just, he didn't have to do that for me, but he did, because he loves me so much.
Yeah. And now our son is a full-grown big boy.